Bonjour, my friends, and welcome back to Queenie of London. I hope you're all doing really well. Today, we're actually heading back inside the beautiful V&A, looking extra special in this beautiful London spring sunshine for part 2 of our tour of the incredible Marie Antoinette Style exhibition. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you check out part 1, in which we versailles glided around the Hall of Mirrors, came face to face with dazzling diamonds, and spent time learning about how the former queen was styled by her minister for fashion. We saw precious relics that belonged to Marie Antoinette, as well as artifacts from her times. But fear not, friends, as today there are even more incredible treasures to behold and important stories from history to hear. The last object we learnt about in part 1 was the letter actually written by Marie Antoinette, and through which we caught a glimpse of the French Queen's character. Today, we're going to pick up right where we left off, on our way to the exhibition's next room. Here, we'll learn even more about who Marie Antoinette really was. So let's journey to a place that was incredibly special to her, and thus where she could really be herself. A 30-minute stroll through the gardens of the Chateau of Versailles leads to Le Petit Trianon, a retreat just beyond the Grand Trianon. Commissioned by Louis XV, it had only been completed 2 years before Marie Antoinette had arrived in France. Appreciating it for its seclusion and possibilities for privacy away from the omniscient court, Marie Antoinette asked her husband if she could have it for her own use. Louis gladly transferred the house and the gardens from the king's household to the queen's. The Petit Trianon became Antoinette's sanctuary, where she could live as she pleased, inviting only her closest companions, enjoying relative privacy and freedom from etiquette. The queen dearly loved furnishings and decorating, but within the main palace she was unable to make any modifications to the decor beyond the very minor. Le Petit Trianon, however, was a canvas upon which she could work her magic. She started with the transformation of the gardens before turning her attention to the house. All her decor choices paid homage to the spirit of the countryside. She brought the outside in, as her favourite cornflowers adorned the furnishings and the objets d'art. In 1782, the royal porcelain manufactory Sèvres delivered to the Trianon the beautiful pearls and cornflower service. We can see pieces featuring the design personally selected by Marie Antoinette and made solely for her. Each piece is bordered with luminous grey pearls and delicate gilding.
And a rustic country style.
Next to the exquisite service, which I spent quite a while admiring, are tools, but they weren't used for any actual gardening or rural work. Instead, they were likely props that featured in pastoral performances that the Queen staged in her own private hidden theatre, Théâtre de la Reine. Temporary performance spaces had been constructed in the gallery of the Grand Trianon and in the Orangery before, but Marie Antoinette asked her designer Richard Meek to build her a real permanent space. Nestled between the French Garden and the area known as Little Switzerland in the grounds is a small unassuming portico, which leads to an intimate venue. The 250-seat theatre was inaugurated in 1780 and included all the machinery for set changes and an orchestral pit for 20 musicians. Marie Antoinette not only used it to stage her own productions, but to provide a stage for the works commissioned from the artists of the Royal Academy of Music. To this day, it is the only surviving 18th century theatre in France which is still fully functioning. You can book a guided tour at the Petit Trianon, which includes a peek into the fully restored Théâtre à la Reine. You can even see how the sets were changed. But the beautiful theatre wasn't Meek's only contribution to Marie Antoinette's rural idyll. In the summer of 1783, Meek, along with artists Hubert Robert and Claude Louis Châtelet, started work creating a little village of antiquity around an artificial lake to the north of the grounds. The quaint Normandy-inspired cottages of La Hameau de la Reine that they dreamed up were intended to look rustic, the architects deploying a technique known as peinte à vétuste, painted to look old. They had thatched roofs, half-timbered walls and irregular facades, but the rustic look ended at the front doors. Inside, they were the epitome of luxury, not ostentatious and extravagant, but refined and elegant. A dozen dwellings stood on the bank of an artificial lake. The tallest was the Marlborough Tower, a sort of lighthouse named after the nursery rhyme sung by the Dauphin's nanny. This had a little pier from which boats could launch. The Queen's house was joined by a pergola-like gallery to a building containing a billiard room and an apartment. Next there was a cottage containing a boudoir and a mill with a reception room, and then a dwelling containing the reheating room, the kitchens. On the other side of a stream fed from the lake was a hen house, a guardhouse, 2 dairy buildings for the making and eating of cheese, and a barn. This hamlet was used by the Queen and her inner circle of friends, but it was also intended to be educational for her children, and as she enlarged the meadows around the lake, she brought in livestock from Switzerland and a farmer from Tours. There was a pigsty, stables, and sheep pens. I think Marie Antoinette would be very happy to learn that the farm was brought back to life in 2006 and sheep roamed the land once again. In 2016, Dior funded a total restoration of the Queen's house, which had been closed to the public since 1848. Since the 1930s, much work has been done to reinforce structures, repairing masonry and roofing to keep these precious buildings standing. It's pretty remarkable that they survived revolution and 2 world wars, considering they weren't really built to last. At times, they have actually taken on the look of dilapidation that their original artists had tried to create. But they are still there. Isn't that just an incredibly touching thing? I would so dearly love to visit this place that was so important and treasured by Marie Antoinette. Through reading a brilliant, highly detailed book dedicated to the Trianon estate by Jacques Moulin, I have learned that to the ancient regime, a building's value increased not just with the status of the person who commissioned it, but also with the, quote, intimacy of that person's associations with it. The more private the building was, the more personal its decor. This rule made it that Trianon was more refined and decorated in a much more personal way than the chateau 30 minutes away on foot, which was so vast and so open that it was almost public. In fact, people could come and view Marie Antoinette's 4-roomed wardrobe. Because of the privacy that it offered the royal families from Louis XIV to Marie Antoinette, the Trianon estate was more precious than Versailles. It's definitely the personal touch that makes the Trianon estate so appealing to me, and such a treasure in terms of learning about the actual characters and tastes of its inhabitants. I would love to make videos looking at all the different parts of Trianon and place it centre stage instead of in the shadow of the Chateau of Versailles.
The English gardens are like
Jean-Baptiste Claude Senet, who almost certainly made this chair, provided furniture for several French royal palaces. This walnut chair is part of a suite which Marie Antoinette used at the Château de Saint-Cloud. You can see busts celebrating Diana, goddess of hunting, supporting the chair's arms, and it features a style she loved so much in the 1780s, elements of the neoclassical and flowers. You can also see her gilded monogram on the top there, within a crested medallion of roses and myrtle. This chair was reupholstered in the 1970s, but I believe at the Petit Trianon there is a set of chairs that have the original coverings Marie Antoinette commissioned. Within her haven of Le Petit Trianon, Marie Antoinette decorated with and wore a lot of printed cotton. The most famous manufacturer of printed cotton in France, and a royal favourite, was Christophe Philippe Oberkampf. He had a factory in Jouy-en-Josas, between Versailles and Paris. When she was still Dauphine, Marie Antoinette visited the Jouy manufactory, and she used, both in her furnishing and in her wardrobe, a lot of Oberkampf's woodblock printed fabrics known as purses. In 1770, Oberkampf started to use the technique of copperplate printing, which was more suitable for prints with figurative subjects. It was only possible to use one colour in its light or dark shade, and the most popular were red, blue, purple or sepia. Meubles à personnages was a popular choice for upholstery and bed hangings. It is this design, the vignettes of people partaking in rural pursuits, that we think of when we hear the term toile de Jouy today. Toile de Jouy featured bucolic scenes which celebrated French rural industry and the beauty of the French countryside. The way toile de Jouy was able to depict people and scenes meant that it became the perfect fabric upon which to tell a story or commemorate an event. In 1783, chief designer at the factory, Jean-Baptiste Huet, drew for Oberkampf Le Travers de la Manufacture, which depicted the process of printing through the 14 individual scenes. It was created to commemorate the visit of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette and the awarding of the stamp Manufacture Royale to Oberkampf. On display here are 3 examples of toile de Jouy: the cherished sheep, the garden of love and the drinking trough, which was designed by Huet for Oberkampf. The fabric was also used to pass comment on socio-political issues, as we'll see a bit later on in this room. This portrait, painted from the 1785 original by Wertmuller, depicts Marie Antoinette and 2 of her children in the gardens of the Petit Trianon. You can see the Temple of Love in the background there. It's a soft, relaxed and maternal painting, rich in nature. Marie Antoinette chose to wear a robe à la Turque and had this dress commissioned especially for the portrait. The family are all wearing the latest fashions of informal dress, but the Queen has worn her silk dress with opulent jewellery. The Temple of Love in the English garden of the Petit Trianon was another of architect Richard Meek's creations for Marie Antoinette. The marble temple of 12 Corinthian columns can be found on its own little island on the English River. A statue of Cupid stands in the middle, carving his bow from the club of Hercules, signifying the triumph of love over strength. The Queen also had Gaultier Daguerty paint her portrait in front of the temple in 1780. If you're enjoying the tour so far, please consider giving me a thumbs up. If you love London's museums as much as I do, why not consider subscribing to the channel? And if you're blown away by what the V&A have curated for Marie Antoinette, hit that hype button. I can't wait to hear what you think in the comments below. Now let's Versailles glide back to the 18th century. 8 years after her marriage to Louis, Marie Antoinette gave birth to their first child in December 1778. Marie-Thérèse Charlotte was known as Madame Royale, and 2 years later she was joined in the royal nursery by a brother, Louis-Joseph Xavier Francois, the long-awaited heir to the throne, the Dauphin. I always find it incredibly sad that Empress Marie Theresa did not live to hear of the birth of her grandson, having continually pressed and pressed in her correspondence, reminding Marie Antoinette time and time again of the need for a male heir. In March 1785, another son, Louis Charles, was born, and in July 1786, the royal couple welcomed baby Sophie Beatrice, who devastatingly died at just 11 months old. Affectionate and involved parenting was an ideal of the Enlightenment and was also championed by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Marie Antoinette thoroughly embraced these ideas and, from what I've read, really loved being a mum. She also stimulated a new approach to motherhood, never before experienced within royal families. As she did with everything else, clothes, hair, shoes, music, drama, furniture, decorating, Marie Antoinette was central to making motherhood itself fashionable. For the first time, aristocratic women carried and nursed their own babies, just as the Queen did, a natural state that had never before been embraced in the most unnatural, controlled, and etiquette-bound sphere of the court. The Balsienne we'll see in a moment was Marie Antoinette's breast bowl, and it's one of 4 from the Sèvres porcelain service made for the dairy at Rambouillet. Marie Antoinette encouraged mothers to breastfeed, including her friend across the Channel, the Duchess of Devonshire. Becoming a mother changed Marie Antoinette, and she doted on her children, bringing them with her to the Petit Trianon, where they too could live a freer, more relaxed life away from court, whilst learning about the natural environment and bonding with their mother. On display here are more items from Marie Antoinette's nécessaire de voyage, her travel toilette case. These cases were elaborate and luxurious and contained items made of silver, porcelain, ivory, ebony, and crystal for grooming, dining, sewing, and writing whilst travelling. It's amazing that these dainty little items have such a huge story to tell. In 1791, during the Revolution, the royal family planned to escape France, and the Queen insisted on bringing her incredibly special nécessaire. She was warned that doing so would cause suspicion and alert the enemies to their plan. So Marie Antoinette had the case and its contents sent as a gift to her sister, Archduchess Maria Christina, governor of Austria. However, she was worried that this might also be seen as an attempt to conceal plans for escape, so she had another identical case made, which she would then take with her. Beautiful things, though, take a long time to make, so the original nécessaire was sent ahead to Archduchess Maria Christina, and she received it safely at the end of May 1791. If she hadn't, we would not be looking at it now. The complete story of what happened to the second duplicate case after it was seized when the royal family were captured during the flight to Varennes remains a mystery. The items on display here are from Marie Antoinette's original case and are on loan from the Louvre. But in the Perfume Museum in Grasse in France is an identical case of veined mahogany and gilded copper accents filled with silverware by Jean-Pierre Charpenat, exactly as those in the original case. The museum at Grasse believe that this is the Varennes case of Marie Antoinette. During her trial, Madame Campan, Marie Antoinette's chambermaid, testified that her mistress's attachment to her nécessaire de voyage was so strong that she would not travel without it. It became a symbol of the Queen's extravagance and her detachment from the social unrest of the times. Thus, this nécessaire de voyage had its own role in the arrest and imprisonment of its owner. Also on display in this cabinet is a Sèvres biscuit porcelain scene of a woman at her toilette. The lady is having her hair done whilst enjoying the company of her husband and children. Marie Antoinette loved figurines made from this innovative unglazed material which looked like the fine grain of marble. The Queen was passionate about her morning toilette, as she was also passionate about good hygiene. Versailles, however, with its great many inhabitants, poor sanitation and waste systems, did not smell very good at all. Marie Antoinette did battle with unpleasant odours by perfuming her palace. One of the ways she did this was by using Sèvres pot puree vases such as this one, using scented pomades and powders, and bringing in fresh flowers to her private chambers. On display here is one of Marie Antoinette's beautiful perfume burners, which was displayed on one of the chimney pieces in her private apartments. We'll have to talk about those another time, or perhaps pay a visit ourselves. For now, though, come with me to experience the novel way the V&A have sought to demonstrate Marie Antoinette's perfumed world. So this section here is all about Marie Antoinette's scented world. She was very, very keen on perfumes and scents. This is her little burner there. And these busts have been set up here so we can give them a sniff to see what different parts of Marie Antoinette's realm smelled like. We'll give it a go. I love the description. This is a scent of a masquerade ball. Versailles was very, very big and you could cram a lot of people in there, so I'm not surprised under those big heavy dresses there was a bit of a whiff of bodies. I'm going to sniff. I can smell the beeswax, friends. This one, sorry about the shadow there, powder and rouge, all about what Marie Antoinette's dressing table would sniff like while she put her face on for the day. I love that description of her rouge there. Let's give it a sniff. I'm going to have to get closer to this one. If anybody's ever smelt Vivienne Westwood's Naughty Alice, that's powdery and musky. Marie Antoinette would have liked Vivienne Westwood's Naughty Alice. Look what this one smells like, the Queen's English Garden. I've read that they actually planted orange trees all along the Grand Trianon and you could smell the oranges. They did it just so you could smell it. So let's see what Marie Antoinette's English garden smells like. Oh, it's fragrant. Can you hear the sniff? Oh, that's lovely. You get the strong jasmine as you're walking away from that one. Very, very nice. And this one's not as pleasant. Oh gosh, the conciergerie herself. I can smell it from here actually. Gosh. That's very disturbing. I'm not going to get closer to that one. Look friends, it's the Temple of Love, the display cabinet there with the dresses in that I'm excited to have a look at, and some furniture. I think there's a harp I can spy. Looks like the Temple of Love in the gardens at the Petit Trianon. I love this exhibition. It's incredible how they've staged it. Remarkable. On this reading, writing, music stand is a label which states that it was a gift from Marie Antoinette. In 1786 it was given to Eleanor Eden whilst her husband was visiting Paris for trade negotiations. Apart from this label, there isn't any other evidence of this though. The insert on the top of this beautiful little table is porcelain from the Sèvres manufactory. Pieces like this were fashionable in the late 18th century because of their multifunctionality. The top is hinged, able to be angled to hold music sheets or books, and within the drawer is a writing surface. Just by the stand is a beautiful pedal harp. Look at those little cherubs at the bottom and all the stunning paintwork. This example is by Jean-Henri Nademan and he was Marie Antoinette's harp maker. The Queen played the harp exceptionally well and helped to make the instrument very, very fashionable within the salons of Paris. This original portrait by Vertmuller from 1788 shows Marie Antoinette wearing a striped silk pihéo, a short tight-fitting jacket. These became part of the fashion for women during the Revolutionary years, but Marie Antoinette had several of them in her springtime wardrobe according to records from 1781. They would have been worn with petticoats of linen or muslin. The hat she wears is of white silk and is draped with gauze, resembling a fez or Turkish hat. If we look over into this mirrored display cabinet, we can see a similar surviving redingote with a striped blue silk taffeta pill and an embroidered petticoat. And if we look at the ensemble's reflection, we should be able to see the sparrow-like tail from which the pill gets its name. By the early years of the 1780s, Marie Antoinette had taken to wearing much plainer, simpler clothing, including white muslin gowns. These were put on over the head and had a drawstring neck. They were tied at the waist with a sash of blue or striped silk and were softly adorned with ribbons or bows. They were worn with a straw bonnet. The Salon de Paris at the Louvre was the most prestigious artistic event in the Western world. In 1783, Vigée Lebrun exhibited this portrait of Marie Antoinette, her greatest royal patron, wearing one of her muslin dresses. Its time on the wall of the Louvre's Salon Carré, however, was incredibly brief, as it immediately caused an uproar. Viewers were shocked at the Queen's choice of attire, believing she looked as if she had been painted en chemise, an 18th century linen undergarment. This was the most informal dress that women would only wear on their own in their private rooms. The majority of the outcry was caused, therefore, by the belief that the portrait was indecent. Critics also maintained that by abandoning the formal robe de cour or robe à la Française, Marie Antoinette was also abandoning the dignity of the monarchy. This dress of imported cotton muslin also demonstrated that she was unpatriotic. At a time when the Lyon silk industry was struggling, her portrait was viewed as an overt snub to the national trade. Word of the portrait spread like wildfire among the literary salons of Paris, where immense cultural power was held. As well as the Queen's reputation, Vigée Lebrun had her own artistic position to protect, and so within a matter of days the portrait was replaced with La Reine à la Rose, which we saw earlier, in which she painted Marie Antoinette in a more formal silk court gown. However, perhaps in no small part because of this painting, the chemise dress, the epitome of deshabillé, began to achieve immense popularity across Europe, even becoming known as la chemise à la reine. It is said that Marie Antoinette was deeply influenced by the ideas of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, even making a pilgrimage to his tomb to pay her respects. The Hameau de la Reine can be seen as a direct manifestation of Rousseau's return to nature ideal. Marie Antoinette also embraced his ideas, advocating for mothers to nurse and educate their own children. Many scholars have put forth the idea that this relaxed mode of dressing was inspired by the Rousseauian idea of femininity. In Emile, a 5-part treatise on the education of the whole person, he identifies the ideal woman as one who, quote, hates luxurious clothes. In her clothes, in her choice of dress, you always see simplicity joined with elegance. In Rousseau's novel, Sophie wears a white dress with one single ribbon. Is this ideal of simplicity joined with elegance what Marie Antoinette wanted to convey in her 1783 portrait? In July 1800, Lebrun painted a posthumous portrait of Marie Antoinette and sent it to Madame Royale, Antoinette and Louis's only surviving child. In it, the late Queen is wearing one of the chemise dresses she was criticized for wearing in Lebrun's portrait 17 years previously. The dress on the left and the dress in the centre of this display cabinet have both come from the Musée de la Toile de Jouy, which sounds like a place I'd quite like to visit. The floral robe à l'anglais from the Oberkampf manufactory is made from purse and is woodblock printed in 7 colours. The embroidered robe en chemise on the left actually belonged to Madame Oberkampf. It is one of only 2 of the kind that survived from the time when they were highly fashionable, made popular by Marie Antoinette. The V&A have also displayed a Bergeresse shepherdess straw hat here, just like the one worn in the Le Brun portrait. Here we are treated to a look at another one of the 4 porcelain services created for Marie Antoinette by the Sèvres manufactory. This one was commissioned in 1784 and is known as Le Riche, in full as riche en couleurs et riche en or, rich in colours and rich in gold. It is the most elaborate and ornate of her services, but showcases elements which had become hallmarks of her style: cornflowers and pearls, as well as roses and pansies. On display is the tureen and tureen stand, the cooler and plates, one of which is from the identical service belonging to the Comtesse d'Artois, Marie Antoinette's sister-in-law. Vivienne Westwood, who called the Wallace collection the greatest art school in this country, looked to Sèvres porcelain as a source of inspiration for her collections, in particular Pagan and Vive la Cocotte. Portrait was also heavily influenced by the French decorative arts on display at the Wallace collection. In fact, there could actually be a whole exhibition alone on Vivienne Westwood and the influence of the 18th century. If you like your porcelain as much as I do, then keep your eyes peeled at the end of this video as we head upstairs in the V&A for a little extra serving of Sèvres. We've already learnt that Marie Antoinette loved drama and music, and a new form of performance became popular because of her. This engraving and etching is named The Gathering at the Concert and depicts a salon concert, a sociable, informal event staged within the home. Aristocrats and courtiers would use these occasions to showcase their own talents and promote new artists and compositions. The people here are all from Marie Antoinette's court. Look, there's Princess de Lamballe on the harpsichord. This is Joseph Boulogne, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, a violin virtuoso, composer, concertmaster, and master fencer. He was incredibly well known and highly acclaimed in Paris, and he performed for and instructed Marie Antoinette. This is Marie Antoinette's piano, made for her by Sébastien Itard in 1887. Itard had been granted a privileged devoir in 1785 for the quality of his craftsmanship. Because of his connections to the monarchy, he escaped France during the Revolution and set up a second workshop in London. In August 1793, the French National Convention initiated a huge year-long auction of the contents of both Le Grand and Le Petit Trianons, which were now designated as national property. Their contents were sold off in the revolutionary sale or scattered or destroyed to erase all the symbols of the Ancien regime. This piano was one of the lots, and it was purchased at the sale by its maker. It survived in the Itard family collection until 1903, and now it's usually to be seen in the Cobb collection in Hatchlands Park in Surrey, which is the largest collection in the world of keyboard instruments owned or played by famous composers. As we look at the piano, we can hear Alec Cobb playing the music of Claude Balbastra, who taught music to Marie Antoinette, as well as Mozart, who she met as a child in Vienna. Marie Antoinette loved music and to perform, and she was praised for her talents. She is credited with being a composer herself for setting the poetry of Jean-Pierre Clarisse de Florian to music. Marie Antoinette brought such a lively and modern culture of music to the court that there were at one point 17 pianos in Versailles. How beautiful the frames as well. Look at that with the little crown on top. At the time, Marie Antoinette's private life at Le Petit Trianon caused suspicion and further advanced rumours of scandal. The work she completed to the house and gardens also added to her reputation as extravagant and frivolous. In a land where all orders emanated from the king, people were also annoyed by the increasing number of rules that were issued by order of the queen. However, as the brilliant book points out, quote, the sums spent on Petit Trianon by Marie Antoinette were relatively modest because gardening work cost less than it had done in the past. Highest estimates put her expenditure there at 3 million livres. The Queen paid a high price for projects more brilliant and less costly than they may have seemed. In the 1780s, as France's debt mounted and the monarchy's power began to recede, Marie Antoinette's style, that had been so admired, was turned against her. As it was perceived, her style, her way of life, quote, symbolized unattainable and unimaginable luxury, contrasting sharply with France's dire financial situation and the hunger of many of its people. The Queen came to be known as Madame Deficit, and a wave of pamphlets washed over Paris, which depicted her as a, quote, wicked, debauched, and monstrous creature. These graphic satires, slanderous rumours, and often sapphic in nature images cast her as the source of the nation's woes, and pamphleteers stoked anti-monarchical sentiment. It can be said, therefore, that Marie Antoinette's style, quote, hastened her path to the guillotine. In 1789, the Declaration of the Rights of Man introduced freedom of the press, which meant that the spreading of rumours about the royal family was no longer an imprisonable offence. Stories that had previously been confined to Versailles emanated out to the wider population, and as they gained momentum, they became more and more exaggerated. During this time, royal manufactories of the luxury goods trade, such as Sèvres, which Marie Antoinette had always dutifully patronised and supported, turned against her. On display is a valance from Oberkampf's former royal manufactory at Jouy. The Huet design commemorates the first anniversary of the fall of the Bastille, the event that triggered the revolution, and the new constitutional monarchy. Marie Antoinette and her family were made to take a role in the Fête de la Fédération and are shown in this design. On the central altar stands an allegorical figure of liberty, and on the right, Louis XVI takes an oath of allegiance to the new nation. At the foot of the altar is Marie Antoinette and the Dauphin. Her daughter, Madame Royale, and sister-in-law, Madame Elizabeth, are on the right. All of them have their arms outstretched in oath. We can also see a commemorative fan depicting the fall of the Bastille. These became fashionable accessories to make a political statement. The objects in this cabinet demonstrate how, during the Revolution and in the years following, a new aesthetic was promoted that represented France's new order, overwriting and casting aside those of the Ancien regime. This book shows fashion plates of patriotic women in riding habits which represented the Republican value of moderation, in stark comparison to the sumptuous luxury of court dress. During the Revolution, these tricolour cockades could be found for purchase on every street corner. They demonstrated the wearer's support for the political cause, but placed on dresses or hats were also a fashion accessory. Marie Antoinette was coerced into wearing them. Courtiers wore pink, white and blue in comparison to the poppy red, white and blue worn by the public. Marie Antoinette diplomatically wore patriotic dress to the Fête de la Fédération in 1790. In the spring of 1789, at the time of the Estates General, the visiting deputies wanted to view the Petit Trianon, upon which they believed masses of France's fortune had been spent. The press had reported, as part of the widespread condemnation and villainization of the Queen, that within her residence was a room, quote, lined with diamonds with twisted columns of sapphires and rubies. The caretaker of the Petit Trianon showed the deputies round. They demanded to see every room in a hunt for the Queen's bejewelled room. They were disappointed because it had never existed. Walking into this dark and foreboding room, we are confronted straight on with the symbol of the Reign of Terror, the guillotine. Marie Antoinette's trial before the Revolutionary Tribunal began on the 14th of October. Over the course of 2 days, she was accused of high treason, conspiracy with foreign powers, and depletion of the national treasury. The prosecution also alleged that she had sexually abused her son, Louis Charles, to which she famously responded after a period of silence, quote, "If I have not replied, it is because nature itself refuses to respond to such a charge laid against a mother. I appeal to all mothers who are present in this room." She was also accused of orchestrating a massacre on the 10th of August 1792, with the prosecution claiming she had ordered the Swiss guards to fire on the people at the Tuileries Palace. Further, Marie Antoinette was accused of inciting famine and of promoting immorality. Marie Antoinette spoke extensively during the two-day trial, actively defending herself against the charges brought by the revolutionaries, responding with composure and with dignity to even the most lurid claims that served as nothing but revolutionary propaganda. The trial was nothing but a show, a predetermined formality, a battle that Marie Antoinette could not win. Marie Antoinette was found guilty of the first three charges at 4 o'clock in the morning on the 16th of October. Following the verdict, she was asked if she had anything to say. She shook her head and was returned to her holding cell. At 4:30 a.m., just before dawn on the morning of her execution, Marie Antoinette wrote a note on a blank page of her prayer book. Translated, it reads, "My God, have pity on me. My eyes have no more tears to cry for you, my poor children. Adieu, adieu." Next to Marie Antoinette's prayer book in the cabinet is a medallion containing strands of Louis Charles's hair, gathered with micropearls. The dark blonde plaited braid is the hair of Marie Antoinette. In the middle is the word friendship. The medallion was a sentimental souvenir given by the Queen to Madame Campan, her first chambermaid. Not so long ago, we were gazing at sumptuous dresses in the V&A's Hall of Mirrors, displayed to demonstrate the kinds of gowns Marie Antoinette would have worn. But now we are confronted with an item of clothing that she actually wore herself, this chemise. It's poignant that it is a relic from her time as a prisoner, not as a queen, known for her style, that is the only item of Marie Antoinette's clothing to have survived. After the insurrection at the Tuileries Palace in August 1792, the Queen's valuable wardrobe was looted, and what remained was sold off the following year. In the Temple prison, the Queen was accorded a modest allowance for her wardrobe. Curator Sarah Grant has written about Marie Antoinette's belongings during her imprisonment. Stylish until the very end, she writes, quote, "Some of the final articles of dress she ordered were a redingote and pierrots of cotton, pink and white, blue and white, and a pierrot of toile de Jouy." By the time she was moved to the conciergerie, her belongings had dwindled to a mere handful of items, one of which was this chemise. As the note explains, it is a fine linen undergarment of the kind worn by all French women. The Last Days of Marie Antoinette by G. Lenotre, the pseudonym of French historian Theodore Gosselin, was published in 1907, and it is a meticulously researched account of the Queen's final months. It includes primary sources and eyewitness testimonials, including that of Rosalie Lemorlier, who devotedly attended Marie Antoinette at the conciergerie. It was translated into English by Mrs. Rodolphe Starwell, and I've linked it below as it is available to read in its entirety online. Rosalie's account is generally considered to be a reliable and invaluable account of Marie Antoinette's final 76 days, despite being dictated to the author of the book decades later. It reveals much, not least about Marie Antoinette's relationship to items of dress. Despite the inherent danger of doing anything to help Marie Antoinette in prison, Rosalie showed immense courage and chose to be kind. She noticed that after the Carnation plot, Marie Antoinette had many of her belongings taken away. Rosalie, seeing her need, hid some of her own chemises under Marie Antoinette's bed. She also gave her a looking glass and recalled how she blushed when she handed it over because of its cheapness. Marie Antoinette, quote, accepted this little glass as if it were quite an important affair. What I also found interesting and incredibly touching from Rosalie's account is the detail and attention she gives to describing not only Marie Antoinette's belongings, but the value the Queen placed in them. Rosalie said that when Marie Antoinette arrived at the conciergerie from the Temple prison in the early morning hours of the 2nd of August, she had nothing, no underclothes and no other garments. On the 10th day of her incarceration, a parcel arrived from the Temple. It contained, quote, some beautiful cambric chemises, some pocket handkerchiefs, some fichus, some stockings of black silk or filassel, a white wrapper to wear in the morning, some nightcaps, and several pieces of ribbon of various widths. Madame was quite touched, continues Rosalie, recalling that Marie Antoinette said, quote, from the careful way in which all these things are arranged, I can recognise the thoughtfulness and the hand of my poor sister Elizabeth. The former queen had no furniture in her cell and asked for a little box to keep her new items from the dust. No one else dared to oblige this request, but Rosalie managed to get permission to give the queen a cardboard box, quote, which she welcomed with as much pleasure as if she had been given the most beautiful piece of furniture in the world. Rosalie also took the queen's bedclothes and warmed them for her on nights Marie Antoinette stood shivering with cold. She took care to prepare the queen the best food she was able to and to serve it up on impeccably clean table linens. She said nothing to anyone about the oval locket Marie Antoinette kept hidden beneath her clothes, wrapped in a yellow glove once belonging to the young Louis Charles. The locket contained a picture of her son and a lock of his hair. Throughout this account it is clear that to Rosalie, Marie Antoinette was not a criminal, but still her Queen of France. Her account makes reference to a great many people, normal people, who obviously felt the same. Rosalie treated her queen with respect, but also showed incredible kindness in the very darkest of days. This account from Rosalie details what Marie Antoinette wore to her trial and to her own execution. It describes with real poignancy the last time the queen was to put on clothes. Once she was a 14-year-old girl, perplexed by the protocols and rituals involved in dressing imposed on her by the diktats of Versailles, only allowed to be touched by those of the very highest rank. Once she was eternally under the eyes and scrutiny of courtiers, watched, assessed, critiqued, then copied. Now, a 37-year-old woman dressed herself in whatever she had left, attempting to shield herself as she did so from the omnipresent glare of the stationed gendarme. These photographs were taken in 1907 at Madame Tussauds in London. They show the wax bust of Marie Antoinette's severed head as it was displayed in the attraction's Chamber of Horrors from 1865 onwards. When it was originally put on display, the catalogue description made no mention of the effigy having actually been cast by Madame Tussauds from a death mask she made immediately after the Queen's execution. But in 1893, the catalogue description was changed to read, quote, Head of Marie Antoinette, guillotined, 16th of October 1793. Death mask taken immediately after her execution by order of the National Assembly of France by Marie Tussauds. This is the first mention of Tussauds having taken a death mask of Marie Antoinette. Following this description, a number of biographies of both Maries, including that of Stefan Zweig for Marie Antoinette, recount the same story. It was stated that Marie Tussauds was taken to the Madeleine Cemetery, apparently asked to secretly take a death mask as she had done for Louis XVI and would later do for a number of prominent figures of the Revolution. Apparently, only she and a few generals of the French Assembly knew of this act, and she was ordered never to display the head. It is interesting to note that the memoirs of Anna Maria Grossholtz, Madame Tussaud, make no mention of this story. She did write about taking the other masks and also about her time living at Versailles, which it is believed she embellished. She also wrote favourably of Marie Antoinette's character, and while she managed the London attraction, the French Queen's full figure was displayed and presented in a positive light, focusing on her life and link to Tussaud. The death mask was not displayed until 15 years after Tussaud's death. The mask then remained on display until it was lost in a fire in 1925. What do you think, friends? Were Tussaud's descendants keen to capitalise on a growing market for the Gothic in the 19th century and so weave a tale to pull in the morbidly fascinated crowds? Or was it that Madame Tussaud stayed true to her supposed word to the National Assembly, never discussing or displaying the head of someone she held a sympathetic view of out of respect? In discussion of the artefacts of Madame Tussauds in the exhibition book, Zoe Luca Richards has noted that, quote, "Our continual fascination with Marie Antoinette lies not only in the glamour and extravagances of her life, but in the violence of her death. This guillotine blade has been in the collection of Tussauds in London since around 1856. Marie Tussaud's sons, Frank and Joseph, had previously travelled to Paris to meet with Henry Clement Sanson, the grandson of Charles-Henri Sanson, the High Executioner during the Revolution. The Tussauds ledger for 1854 documents that £110 was paid to Sanson for a guillotine, lunette, and Sanson's original drawings. Despite its authenticity being questioned, its provenance does seem to suggest it is actually from the Reign of Terror, and it is possible that this very blade beheaded Marie Antoinette. It remained on display in the Chamber of Horrors until the whole section closed in 2016. Although it reopened in 2022, the blade has not been re-exhibited. Marie Antoinette didn't only write in her prayer book at 4:30 in the morning before her execution. She also penned a letter to her sister-in-law. 59 years later, this letter, which didn't get to Madame Elizabeth, was put on display in the new Museum of Sovereigns wing at the Louvre. The man who had decreed the creation of this wing, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, took his new wife with him to visit it. Eugenie was rather taken with Marie Antoinette's letter and requested that the curator read her words aloud. The curator's recollections of this moment serve as the earliest demonstration of the Empress's fascination with Marie. He described how he witnessed Eugenie listen in silence with tears in her eyes to the final words of a queen ready to mount the guillotine, of the mother who in this terrible moment couldn't even embrace her children. This moment in 1852 is the starting point for explaining why there is a portrait of the wife of the man who turned France from a republic to an empire hanging here in the V&A. And it also provides an insight into why, in this portrait, she was painted to look like she was part of the ancient regime of the 18th century. Eugenie was fascinated by Marie Antoinette. In 1857, the Spanish-born Eugenie chose to present a portrait of herself and her son at the Paris Salon. She had commissioned the respected European court portraitist Franz Xavier Winterhalter to paint her in a voluminous rich red velvet dress with sable fur collar. The dress, in comparison to the red, white and blue tricolour flag of the revolutionaries that adorn her son, appears to reference the Ancien regime. Eugenie had been inspired in her choice of outfit by a Lebrun portrait of Marie Antoinette and her children of 1787. Eugenie admired this painting so much that she had it hung as a tapestry in one of the imperial family residences. This was not, however, the first time she had commissioned Winterhalter to paint her à la Ancien regime. In 1854, he had worked from a photograph of the Empress dressed up for one of her fancy dress balls. The picture on display here is a reproduction of Eugenie in a yellow silk 18th century dress in the style of a robe à la polonaise, with passementerie, fringe detail, and embellishment in the form of pearls and bows. She also has powdered hair. She may have kept this portrait proudly in her private quarters, but Eugenie became known publicly as the Countess of the Crinoline, never making a secret of her admiration and respect for the strength, resilience, and tastes of the former French queen. This section of the exhibition shows how it was royal sympathisers of the 19th century who, by emulating her dress and collecting her things, laid the foundations that would cement Marie Antoinette and her aesthetic as truly iconic. These frame drawings are costume designs for Charles Frederick Worth, Eugenie's favourite couturier. In 1806, Eugenie attended a masquerade at the Tuileries Palace dressed as Marie Antoinette, and she frequently hosted similar balls where her guests could, quote, rekindle the spirit of the 18th century through their outfits. Eugenie knew that the former French queen loved a masquerade, relishing the chance to slip into disguise. Perhaps, as Stefan Zweig noted, she relished it a little too much. Heading over to this display cabinet, we can see one of Eugenie's actual bodices. It's from about 1855 and is made from one of Marie Antoinette's favourite materials, Chine silk. The object card notes that the flower design was also inspired by the glaze printed cottons that Marie Antoinette made fashionable. As we saw earlier, bows were a very stylish form, and the pink edged ones on this bodice evoke that particularly refined 18th century adornment. The skirt is a modern recreation, but has been meticulously crafted to show what Eugenie's full gown would have looked like. It's said that Eugenie never wore the same dress twice to any of the masquerades she attended. One of her most famous recreations of 18th century gowns was white with silver thread and trimmed with daisies and, of course, diamonds. Not unlike the former French queen she admired, she offered her patronage to French manufactories, including Sèvres, much loved by Antoinette. And she also launched the careers of new names on the fashion scene, including couturier Charles Frederick Worth and the leather craftsman Louis Vuitton. Eugenie therefore did not merely dress up as Marie Antoinette, but adopted techniques she herself had used to present herself as the epitome of French taste and style. The zenith of Eugenie's public display of appreciation for France's former queen came in 1867. During the exposition Universelle, the first ever exhibition dedicated to Marie Antoinette was held at the Petit Trianon. Organised by Eugenie, it included more than 150 objects from private collections and 11 from her own treasure trove. With an interest in 18th century interior decoration, Eugenie purchased items that had belonged to Marie Antoinette at auction and had also commissioned craftspeople to recreate elements of her interior cabinet at Versailles. The book in the front of the display case is the exhibition catalogue. It shows visitors exploring the chateau and the gardens, and the accompanying text, quote, romantically imagines the queen inhabiting the different spaces. What makes this particular catalogue extra special is that it belonged to John Jones, the gentleman collector who made the large bequest to the V&A we learnt about earlier. It's pretty amazing to stand looking at this catalogue on display in the most recent exhibition on Marie Antoinette. Eugenie took such care and went to great lengths to commemorate the French queen and memorialise her tastes. Also displayed in this cabinet is a chair with the initials MA. This chair is part of an original set of 4 and was part of the recreation of Marie Antoinette's bedroom for Eugenie's exhibition. Above the exhibition catalogue is a spread from Femina magazine of the 15th of February 1911. It reproduces photos that Eugenie had taken of herself in historical dress. They wouldn't have appeared publicly during her time, but rather circulated amongst her friends. The last object in this cabinet is an evening dress from between 1840 and 1850, so just before Eugénie became empress. The apron is by Paris silk accessories merchant Boivin Jeune. Aprons were an important accessory in the fashionable toilette, and Jeune made this one from the brocaded silk taffeta of a gown originally made between 1780 to 1800. It's special because it features Marie Antoinette's favourite, cornflowers. During this time, artifacts from the past, such as these aprons, or also fans, were highly admired when added to an ensemble, especially if they had been passed down from family members. So whilst Eugénie was dressing up as Marie Antoinette for masquerades and staging exhibitions of the former queen's belongings, what was happening across the channel? Was there a similar interest in Marie Antoinette, who had herself been a bit of an Anglophile? In 1854, in no small part because of Napoleon's favourable feelings towards England, the Anglo-French alliance in the Crimean War was sealed. Following his visit to London, Queen Victoria and her husband, Prince Albert, spent 10 days in France on a diplomatic visit. You didn't think I'd come to the V&A and not mention Victoria and Albert, did you? The royal couple were given a tour of the Palace of Versailles, and afterwards they visited the Petit Trianon to have lunch within the former Queen's hamlet with Napoleon and Eugénie. This painting by Carl Girodet documents their arrival at the Maison de Seigneur, formerly the Queen's house. Queen Victoria is in the carriage with Eugénie. A band plays as swans and boatmen glide on the lake. Later that evening, a very grand ball was held at the Petit Trianon, and Napoleon waltzed with England's young queen. Victoria wrote in her diary about her visit, reflecting that she felt the lingering presence of Marie Antoinette, quote, that poor unhappy queen. She also noted how the trees in the gardens had all been planted by, quote, poor Marie Antoinette herself. Although this trip was a state occasion, the visit to these intimate locations of Marie Antoinette was deeply felt by Victoria and reveals her own interest in the former queen. I'm just looking at some of the images on the wall here, and if we have a little look, that caption says Princess Louise, daughter of Queen Victoria, and we've got a little picture of her, little photo up here of her. Isn't that lovely? She's playing Marie Antoinette dress up as well by the looks of things. Princess Louise was actually a pretty brilliant sculptress. She did the sculpture of her mother at the fountain outside Kensington Palace. Have you ever seen this portrait before? It's Queen Victoria in costume for the 1745 fancy dress ball of 1845. Marie Antoinette Style, as it appeared in portraits by Lebrun, inspired many costumes for many fancy dress balls from the 1840s up until the start of the First World War. Quote, the Victorians loved fancy dress because it allowed them to escape the strict etiquette of everyday and fashionable dress by wearing clothing that might otherwise be considered risque. The ball that Victoria is dressed up for in this portrait was known as a bal poudre, one where attendees powdered their hair or wore powdered wigs. The theme being 18th century French court dress, inclusive of the reigns of Louis XV and XVI. Meet Daisy Greyville, Countess of Warwick. Here she is donned in what is considered to be the most extravagant Marie Antoinette costume of the Victorian period. She wore it for a bal poudre held at her home in Warwick Castle on the 1st of February 1895. Her pale pink and white court dress had a sapphire-hued train, which was embellished with fleur-de-lis and was held in position from shoulder to shoulder with diamonds. The bodice also seems to be encrusted with them alongside those pearls. Daisy's costume was too good not to wear again, and wear it again she did, to the fancy dress ball of the Duchess of Devonshire of the 2nd of July 1897. This was a phenomenal, lavish affair held to celebrate celebrate Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. The ball had 5 historical themes, and the courts of Louis XV and XVI was one of those themes. So extravagant were the costumes that the Lafayette Photography Company set up a studio in the grounds to take portraits. Here are some of the costumes inspired by the characters of the court of Marie Antoinette. The V&A actually have one of the costumes from the Devonshire House Ball. It's this one, a Louis XV themed riding outfit worn by Lady Isabella Stanley. It's actually by Charles Worth, who likely made quite a few of the outfits for that ball. It isn't immaculate in its historical accuracy, but it is pure quality, made of velvet, silver lace, silk, satin, and chiffon. When it came to fancy dress costumes, the Victorians really did their research. There were guides for those who wanted to make their costumes at home. The book in this cabinet, Album of More or Less Historical Dress, would have been consulted by aristocratic and middle-class women for costume design ideas. Here the page is open to an instantly recognisable one, Marie Antoinette's Pouf à la Belle Poule, a sensation among her contemporaries. The Victorians also loved it, and it was replicated again and again for many a ball. The Victorians also used clothing actually from the past for their fancy dress balls. Many looked to the wardrobes of their great-grandmothers for sartorial treasure. The sack and petticoat behind the book is made from French Cinné silk velvet, and it is from between 1775 and 1785. Undoubtedly, it was kept because of its elaborate, beautiful, and expensive design and material, but was altered around 100 years later in such a dramatic way to accommodate for 19th century underpinnings that it can now only be used as an example of Victorians playing historical dress-up. The features of the original 18th century style have been irreversibly destroyed. On the 28th of June 1919, a peace treaty ending the First World War was signed in the Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles. The palace had been undergoing significant restoration work under its first conservator, Pierre de Nohac, prior to the outbreak of war, and between 1924 and 1927, the recommenced project received substantial donations from John D. Rockefeller Jr. These funds allowed for much essential work, including restoring Le Petit Trianon and the Queen's Hamlet. The curator, Nohac, had also published several volumes specifically about Marie Antoinette, which were picked up again as the world emerged from war. All of this brought Versailles during the 18th century back into focus and stimulated an Art Deco fascination with Marie Antoinette and a revival of her style. This section of the exhibition begins with examples from the 1920s and 1930s promulgation of illustration that use Marie Antoinette's image and perceived aesthetic to convey melancholy and enchanted beauty. On display we'll see a costume designed by Erte and one of his many covers for Harper's Bazaar, Body of Snow, Heart of Fire. We can also see fashion plates by Georges Barbier and his illustrations in a 1934 edition of Dangerous Liaisons. Marie Antoinette is known to have had a copy of this 1782 novel in her personal library. There is also Dorlac's illustration of Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen. Curator Sarah Grant has perfectly explained why Marie Antoinette style appealed to the people of the 1920s and 30s. Its lure, she writes, quote, can be attributed to the state of a society emerging scared yet resilient from the death and deprivations of the First World War and the continuing hardships of the Depression. The gilded youth of the 1920s invoked the perceived golden age of the final gasp of the Ancien regime in all its romanticised reverie, seeing a correlation between the giddy and gay abandon of their own newly reborn generation and the supposed decadence and debauchery of a lost court whose days were passed in a whirl of fashion and romance. The Marie Antoinette style, Grant observes, quote, entered a new phase, a form of escapism that suggested variously beauty, artifice, sensuality, nostalgia, innocence, intimacy, secrecy, illusion, and enchantment. The 1920s were a revolutionary time in fashion, featuring new synthetic fabrics, rising hemlines, and softer silhouettes. There was also a revival of the 18th century taking place. Reference to Marie Antoinette's clothing and accessories were made continually in major fashion publications, and well-known designers and couturiers created clothes that dressed the past in the ideas and fabrics of modernity. Lanvin was credited with inventing the gown that defined the Art Deco period, and who came up with its name, the robe de style. The robe de style was most often made in a fine silk with a fitted bodice, 1920s drop waist, and a full skirt that ended at the calves or ankles. The dress was worn over panniers which invoked the silhouette of the 18th century. The first dress we see here is Lanvin's white silk organza take on the chemise à la reine. The second dress is also by Lanvin, from 1922 to 1923, and was intended for evening wear. Other couturiers, including Poiret, Lucille, Vionnet, Paquin, and Calotte-Sers, made robe de style dresses. The third deco dress on display is by Boet-Sers. Sylvie and Jean were renowned for their lingerie frocks and their signature flower, the rose. Advertisements for the Boet-Sers featured models in their transparent lingerie dresses posing as Trianon-esque shepherdesses. This dress in peach lace and silk chiffon has exaggerated panniers, silk ribbon applique flowers and foliage, a lame panel, and silver cord embroidery. Friends, get ready. We're about to step into our final room and onto the catwalk and film set as we explore the many ways the Marie Antoinette style has been evoked in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. But before we are dazzled by dresses, I know, aren't I such a tease? There are a few photographs for us to look at which set the scene. The first two photographs on display here are both by Tim Walker, and both evoke Marie Antoinette style through the ensembles worn by the models and through their settings. The first, from Vogue Italia from March 2010, is from the Lady Grey editorial. The model is crowned with Marie Antoinette's famous ship headdress and is, quote, enveloped in pleated organza with theatrical scrolls. Charles Guillain is also powdered and wears feathers in the hair. The second photo is from an editorial for Vogue of April 2012. Kate Moss is in the Louis XVI style Imperial State Suite of the Ritz in Paris, and the feature in the American edition was to commemorate the renovation of the hotel. Moss wears a satin brocade Alexander McQueen dress with a bodice of ruffles inspired by the stomachers of the 18th century. The Vogue editorial describes the cornflower blue dress as, quote, reminiscent of 50s couture with its Dior-esque full skirt and silhouette. But the silk is woven with a swirling rococo pattern. Her lace platform heels are all 21st century, but her Julian D's headpiece of blue and white ruffles and fibres could be a creation of Marie Antoinette's hairdresser, Monsieur Léonard. Although she is not known to have kept chihuahuas, Marie Antoinette was a real dog lover. Famous four-legged friends of the Queen include her pug Mops, who was taken from her at the border when she arrived from Austria and later rejoined her at Versailles to live a life of luxury. There was also Thisbe, a toy spaniel, who followed her to prison and reportedly waited outside the conciergerie. There was also Odin, a Leonberger, gifted to her by Count Fersen. I've briefly mentioned the series of secret rooms that lay beyond the Queen's formal apartments at Versailles. This photograph by Robert Polidori from 2006 shows the Queen's bathroom in those private chambers. Marie Antoinette decorated these rooms extensively, but by the time this beautiful space was complete in 1789, she would have had little time to enjoy it before being forced out of Versailles. Have you been waiting for this bit, friends? The finale room, the showstopper room. In 1998, John Galliano told the model wearing this eau de Nil haute couture gown to make an ending, and it now makes the entrance to the exhibition's final room. This was the finale gown to Galliano's theatrical spectacle for Dior held at the Palais Garnier Opera House in Paris. Galliano wanted each of his models to perform, to embody specific characters, to create a fashion opera. The dramatic Marquise Masquet gown was inspired by a Venetian masquerade costume worn by the Italian heiress, the Marchesa Luisa Casati, a living work of art to whom the whole Spring-Summer 1998 Dior collection was a tribute. The pannier silhouetted gown is infused with shot silk taffeta to give it an iridescent sheen. The bodice is beribboned and delicate ruffles add flounce and further drama. It invokes the opulence of the historic alongside the signatures of classic Dior, the cinch waist of the new look, and polka dots. In 2006, Stella Tennant was styled by Grace Coddington and photographed by Mario Testino for a Vogue feature entitled No Rules Britannia. She wore this very dress with a powdered wig topped with ostrich feathers. Remind you of anyone? The theatrical creation was imbued with all the tropes of 18th century French court style, and when you think 18th century French court style, you think Marie Antoinette. I love the way this dress has been displayed to its fullness here. The pannier is so wide that it appears the whole room revolves around it, and the train so long that it stretches your mind all the way back to the wedding dress we saw in the V&A's Hall of Mirrors. In this room, it is around this dress we walk as we take in all the other designs that have Marie Antoinette at their heart. Thus, it is this dress, with its tributes to the features of a court gown and signatures that have become inextricably linked to Marie Antoinette, as well as the way it's been displayed front and centre, that communicates this room's central message, that Marie Antoinette has become an eternal muse, her style providing endless inspiration and opportunities for creative interpretations by those who are equally as fascinated by her story. There's two of these films that are showing on the huge screen. There's a lot of shots in this one of Marie Antoinette on film. There's Norma Shearer. And then if we watch, you can see the models actually in the catwalk shows wearing some of the dresses that we've got on display in this finale room. some of the exhibits as well. I love how they've composed this to the music. Wow, it's really cool. Oh, there's the Canal Plus. Oh, there's the dress. Look at that one. That's how it was, the make and ending finale bit of the catwalk show by Galliano. I love that. Look at her as Kirsten Dunst. Yes, you can see all the dresses in action. How cool. We're going to walk clockwise around Galliano's gown, and our first stop just happens to be a cabinet full of jewels. The necklace by Karl Lagerfeld for Chanel is a familiar sight, designed to replicate the necklace at the heart of the infamous scandal. The camellia flower has been added in, a classic Chanel motif. Here's our first glimpse of many of the ensembles worn in the 2006 Sofia Coppola film, and what a glimpse. The diamond crescent moon and star earrings worn by Kirsten Dunst in the birthday and coronation sequences. Costume designer Melina Canonero sourced approximately $4 million worth of 19th century jewels from NYC Emporium Fred Leighton. The final three stunners are all by Victoire de Castellane for the House of Dior, and all are inspired by Versailles. There's the Tanzanite bracelet, inspired by the palace's famous orangery, the Plaisir Champêtre bracelet, which pays homage to Marie Antoinette's love of flowers and her rural retreat at the Petit Trianon. And finally, my personal favourite, the Salon de Venus, which reflects the painted ceiling above the entrance to the King's and Queen's apartments at Versailles, as well as the 1700s love affair with the bow motif. These incredible shoes are from the 2006 film Marie Antoinette by Sofia Coppola. It's in my top 5 films of all time, and I could talk about it for days on end. We're going to see some of the award-winning costumes of Melina Canonero, which was such an incredible thrill, but also on display, and equally as exciting for me to see up close, were these, the exquisite shoes from the film by Manolo Blahnik. Looking at them, gazing at them, felt like fantasy had Versailles glided on into reality. Manolo isn't only the sponsor of the exhibition and the maker of these shoes for the film, but also happens to be, his words, obsessed with Marie Antoinette. Writing in the foreword to the exhibition book, he details how his fascination began in his early years when his mother read him the Stephen Zweig biography. He tells how Marie Antoinette has been a constant in his life and in his work. Because of his personal feeling and the importance of Marie Antoinette to his life and work, there is no way anyone else out there but Blahnik could have come up with and then made shoes anywhere near as enchanting and as brilliant as these. You can see the love in them, feel the fascination. You can even, despite the fact that Canonero told him, quote, not to be academic in his creations, feel the real life Marie Antoinette in them. All of those ingredients come together alchemically in these shoes. Using Lyon silks from Claremont and embroideries from Stephen Walters, they were made by Blahnik himself here in England. The viewer of the film doesn't know whilst watching, but each one of the 100 shoes Manolo made was named after a French figure or a place, silently telling a part of Marie Antoinette's story. The way they were featured in the film makes characters of them, communicating the way Marie Antoinette leant on fashion as a means of escaping from and bending the rules of Versailles. This truly is the exhibition that keeps on giving. It's hard, but try not to look at the gorgeous gowns just yet, but instead cast your eyes behind them. This isn't just a backdrop, it's a piece of art which has been specially created for the exhibition by Brooklyn-based artist Beth Cattleman. This large-scale piece is called Marie Antoinette's Folly and is made from one of the Queen's favourite materials. Over 4,500 individually cast and handmade pieces of biscuit porcelain. The artist collects toys, dolls and knickknacks and then creates moulds of them before transforming them into scenes of delicate porcelain. Interestingly, the Rousseau brothers, two of Marie Antoinette's favourite craftsmen, actually added carved scenes onto the wood panelling of the Petit Trianon. These often featured cherubs and bucolic scenes. This adds another layer of historical significance to this incredible piece. Of her creation, the artist has said, quote, "At Marie Antoinette's Hameau de la Reine, the guillotine is never far away." There are two mirrors in the centre of this display which represent parallel opposites, the escapism and serenity of the Queen's hamlet at the Petit Trianon and the imprisonment and violence of her end. The mirror with the swing shows Marie Antoinette being pushed by Louis whilst gazed upon by Count Fersen in a recreation of Fragonard's famous painting. Axel, down in the bushes, is a rather Michelangelo's David type, and the artist has said that she cast him from a hunky Chippendale cake topper. As an aside, you know where else Fragonard's The Swing has been an inspiration? In The Slipper and the Rose, the famous scene where Cinderella is living incognito in a rural paradise and is visited by the fairy godmother. Look at costume designer Julie Harris's pink creation here. Isn't it gorgeous? And so, Marie Antoinette. The second mirror details all the opulence of Versailles, but it's overrun by a mob. The artist has explained that she went into her archives of collectibles and, quote, picked all the figures that represented every walk of life. She details how there is a little soldier boy, a Botticelli Venus on a clamshell, and Napoleon. At the top of this mirror, overlooking all the figures armed with swords and shotguns, is the masked executioner. He, Cattleman has identified, is portrayed by Curly from the Three Stooges. Below, Marie Antoinette is masked, ready for a masquerade ball, and if you look closely, you can see a miniature guillotine in her hair, parodying the poof she made famous with the help of hairdresser Monsieur Leonard. In a particularly poignant scene, you might also be able to spot Marie Antoinette's son, Louis Charles, imprisoned with a pet rat. Around the two mirrors and beneath the hovering Petit, which instead of classical winged cherubs look like baby dolls, are smaller scenes which combine to make a physical 3D version of toile de Jouy fabric. But if you look at these scenes closely, you can see a different story is being told beneath the illusion of a delicate pastoral dream. There's 6 scenes which are repeated to create the whole toile de Jouy tableau. We can see a giant doll looming over the Eiffel Tower, a group of maidens walking too close to the edge of a pond. There are so many details to pick up on in these little vignettes. A sheep walking over a treacherous bridge to a mountain where a female figure is seemingly trapped on the precipice. A naked woman appears stuck up a tree next to a giant bird, and there are countless trees that look like those little sponge cakes on sticks or lollipops. I don't know if it's my imagination, but in some places it seems as if figures are lurking beneath the intricate shrubbery. All these scenes appear to float on clouds beneath petals that fall from the arms of the hovering Petit. I love that the exhibition about Marie Antoinette has actually resulted in a piece of art with parts of her story at its heart. I also really love how it's been used here in the gallery against a dark background. The white pieces seem to glow, inviting you into an ethereal grotto. we can look at the dazzling dresses. The first two examples are both by John Galliano, for whom Marie Antoinette was a constant source of inspiration, but not always just for wide silhouettes and extravagant embellishments. His shows and collections look to the tumultuous times and the dark days of the Revolution. The first dress is a deconstructed corset evening gown, which has a pixelated effigy of the Viennese Drury portrait of the 17-year-old Dauphine. This evening gown was part of the Dior Haute Couture collection for Spring-Summer 2006. The garments in this show were embroidered with the revolutionary slogan Liberté, Égalité, Fraternity, and many of the gowns had blood-drenched hems. The models themselves had blood-red scarves covering heavily made-up faces, and some had 1789 painted on their skin. The second dress is from the earlier Freud or Fetish collection of Autumn-Winter 2000 to 2001. It's known as the Angie, and as the object card states, is one of the most iconic dresses ever inspired by Marie Antoinette's style and story. The dress was part of the central nightmare scene in Galliano's three-part show, and if we look at the details, we'll see exactly why. It's based on a pannier robe à la polonaise, and its rich embroidery tells the story in two halves. On the right side of the skirt, the Queen is shown wearing court dress, but on the left is a revolutionary tricoteuse, a knitter. She wears a cap of liberty whilst knitting by a bloodied guillotine, and the heads of a sheep and the Queen herself can be seen nearby. The dress is painted and embroidered with floral motifs, bows and cupcakes, as well as with the Queen's flock of sheep from the Petit Trianon. All of the imagery comes together beneath the diamond necklace that adorns the bodice. It's a replica of the diamond necklace at the centre of the scandal we learnt about in Part 1, which was a catalyst for the Queen's demise. Now that's what I call symbolism. In Galliano's show, the model wearing Angie had a wind-up key and some stuffing coming from her back, as if she was a broken toy doll. Her face makeup was a heavy powdered white, and a red cross was painted on her neck. The wig featured pearls and feathers, and the shoes featured Marie Antoinette's favourite, the Huberty heel. And of course, there was a fan with some appropriate imagery. How clever is it that it stands in the centre here, in front of the cattleman tableau? Both creations telling the two contrasting chapters of Marie Antoinette's life story. Has anyone seen Marie Antoinette created by Deborah Davis? I'm currently watching both incredible seasons again. They filmed so much of those shows in the actual locations of Versailles, Fontainebleau and Château de Vaux de Vicomte. The costume in it is lavish and intricate. So I was over the moon to see a dress on display here from the show. This is one of two designed for leading lady Amelia Scholl by Christian Dior Couture. Both dresses were white and appear in crucial scenes. One where Marie Antoinette is presented for the first time to the people of Paris alongside Louis, and the second when she attends her first party at the Petit Trianon. Both are one-of-a-kind dresses made just for the show. I love the placing of this incredible dress here against the folly. Very, very clever, because Dior seamstresses and artisans use hand-sewn techniques that are similar to those of Marie Antoinette's time. And the folly is made of the very fine biscuit porcelain so adored by Marie Antoinette. These incredibly modern pieces are not only inspired by our Queen of Style, but actually align themselves to her in their production. They aren't merely superficial, there's a significance to their style. To this significance, you can also layer the referencing to the 18th century that Christian Dior himself continually made, most notably in the toile he chose to cover his boutique Colifichet on the ground floor of his Paris salon in 1947. So I thought those pretty cakes were just there for setting the scene for the Marie Antoinette film, but they're actually from the La Durée bakery on the Champs-Élysées, which is quite pretty. The little macarons from that bakery were actually presented by Sofia Coppola to Melina Canonero, and she used them to express what colours she liked, and so I think that's a pretty lovely little story. So, we've seen jewels from the film, we've seen shoes from the film, and now it's time to see dresses from the film. Marie Antoinette by Sofia Coppola from 2006, based on the exceptional biography Marie Antoinette The Journey by Lady Antonia Fraser. On display here are 3 of Melina Canonero's Oscar-winning gowns as worn by Kirsten Dunst in her role as Marie Antoinette. Whilst coming up with the designs for the film, Melina Canonero actually came here to the V&A to consult their extensive collection of 18th century costume and textiles. Do you think she might have studied the gowns we saw earlier in the V&A's Hall of Mirrors for her research? The first dress from the film we're lucky to see here is of silk pink tulle, and it's from the Let Them Eat Cake scene, when Kirsten is surrounded by cakes and confectionery as pink as the tulle of her petticoat. This dress has always reminded me of this portrait, which just last year was discovered to in fact be of Marie Antoinette's older sister, Maria Carolina. But the dress also reminds me of this portrait of the young French queen herself, which was previously thought to be of her sister. Both portraits are by Swiss painter Jean-Étienne Lyotard, and the discovery of the mistaken identities was made by Professor Catriona Seth of Oxford University. Both portraits show dresses which share not only colours but a certain frothiness with this one of Canonero's creations. In all 3 gowns on display here, we'll see how Canonero's designs for the film, quote, convey a young and stylish queen through a combination of period detail and a delectable yet carefully balanced palette of pastels and neons. The second gown is actually one of my personal favourites from the film, so I was so excited to see it up close. It's from the chapel and dining room vignettes and is made of silk with feather trim. This dress really showcases how successfully Canonero interpreted Coppola's vision of bringing Marie Antoinette to life for new audiences. The dress looks playful and full of joie de vivre next to the sombre and oppressive dark hues worn by the Comtesse de Noailles, Madame Etiquette, who Marie Antoinette sits next to in the chapel. I seem to remember there having been a little matching take on the tricorn hat, which paralleled the more traditional tricorn worn by Louis as he tucks into a huge feast at the dining table. The dress in these particular short scenes serves as a visual signifier to Marie Antoinette's inner emotions, feeling out of place and alone in her new world at Versailles. You can't help thinking of her mother's warning, "All eyes will be on you," when your eyes are drawn to this eye-popping neon. The third dress appears in the now incredibly iconic "I Want Candy" montage. This scene comes across like a music video to Bow Wow Wow's cover from 1982, and in it, Marie Antoinette is being fitted into this very dress of pastel blue silk and silver and gold metallic embroidery. I wonder if instead of the Manolos, Kirsten wore this dress with those brilliantly incongruous Converse. She wears the same dress with the pouf à la Belle Poule hairpiece in a very short scene set in the grounds of Versailles while celebrating the French naval victory over the English. This dress was also chosen to be worn by Kirsten Dunst for the entire cast photograph shot by Annie Leibovitz for Vogue in September 2006. As we've learned, the dresses created by Canonero for the film were based on the gorgeous colours of the La Diore macarons, and also on Fête Gallant paintings and the Queen's original furnishings. But a close look at the costumes as they appear on screen reveals that perhaps Canonero also took direct inspiration from objects we've seen in part 1 of our tour. From swatches from Marie Antoinette's wardrobe book and from surviving dress fragments that belong to the Queen. I call that stylization with some substance. Now, apparently, I've read that these dresses and a lot more costumes from the 2006 film are actually going on display at the Petit Trianon at the start of the autumn. So that's pretty exciting. I think that would be magnificent to see them in Marie Antoinette's favourite place. Shall we go, friends? This absolute stunner was actually made by Karl Lagerfeld for not the film but a photo shoot that appeared in Vogue. Does anybody remember that? Really amazing edition of Vogue to celebrate the film. Amazing photography and that, like, modern meets 18th century. I'll pop a little picture in if I can, but this was designed specifically for Annie Leibovitz to shoot Kirsten Dunst wearing. Karl Lagerfeld was a great enthusiast of all things 18th century. He not only collected art and furniture of the period, but outwardly displayed his passion through his low-powdered ponytail and the carrying of a fan. He incorporated elements of the 18th century into his work for Chanel. The Chanel Cruise collection of 2013 was shown at the Palace of Versailles, and its name, Coco Rocks, played with the word Rococo. In this collection, Chanel's pastel tweeds and costume jewellery came together with ruffles, diamond chokers, and skirts and shorts which stuck out at the hips like a pannier skirt. A bit later on, we'll see a beautiful ensemble from this very collection. The incredible costume designer Gilbert Adrian created in excess of 1,200 costumes for the 1938 MGM film Marie Antoinette. 34 of these were for leading lady Nora Shearer. They were the most lavish and expensive costumes ever produced. Adrian did a lot of research, wishing to, quote, saturate himself with Marie Antoinette's century. His incredible talent resulted in a display of period detail combined with 1930s Hollywood glamour. It was originally intended that Van Dyck's film be shot in Technicolor, with the costumes specially dyed and sets color coordinated. However, the cost of the film before producing in colour was already at $2.9 million, so Adrian's dazzling costumes were only ever seen in black and white on screen. Adrian also did the costumes for Wizard of Oz, and his love of the 18th century and Marie Antoinette style also inspired the fantasy in pink dress of Glinda the Good Witch. I've come round the side to have a look at Adrian's costume for Norma Shearer, and the detail is just dreaming. This could actually be in the Hall of Mirrors room, to be honest. I think it's convincing. You wouldn't know that that was from the 1930s. Apparently this dress appears in The Great, on Catherine the Great. I've not seen it, but I think I jolly well shall now. Look at this, I love the headdress. This toile de jouy is dreamy. I love it in the pink. As we look at the rest of the ensembles in this section, I want to take the words of Oriole Cullen from her contribution in the exhibition book, as they perfectly encapsulate the resounding message of this showcase. As a known and celebrated reference, she writes, quote, "Marie Antoinette offers designers a point of identity from which to take flights of fancy. She opens a portal of imagination that runs the extremes, tipping from luxury and frivolity into a dark demise, allowing for experimentation and illusion far away from practical concerns. As during her lifetime, she continues to appear in new and surprising ways, an eternal life lived through the medium of fashion in which she herself found escape. In her lifetime, Marie Antoinette's love of fashion and beautiful things created an image of the queen that fueled claims of monarchical excess and resulted in an anger so potent it led to her death. It's poignant, therefore, that while fashion may have hastened her path to the guillotine, it is that same fashion that keeps Marie Antoinette alive." What's that often cited quote from Saint Laurent and also of Chanel? "Fashions fade, style is eternal." We've seen more than enough evidence in this room through outfits of the runway and the gowns of stage and screen to prove that it is Marie Antoinette, the tastemaker of her times, that truly embodies this sentiment. For his Autumn-Winter 2020 collection for Moschino, Jeremy Scott took the let them eat cake myth and ran with it with typical Moschino whimsy. The models in this show wore pannier dresses over denim as well as leather, and there were toile de jouy pannier mini dresses. These two tiered cake dresses were part of the finale. Aren't they fabulous? Do you think there's any chance they have these wigs in the gift shop? Although there's no denying that when you walk into this part of the gallery, the visuals are stunning, I don't particularly enjoy the top level because it's hard to get a good look at the detail of the beautiful ensembles on display. I've tried to capture them for you as best I can do. From left to right, these ensembles are: number 1, RuPaul's Drag Race finalist Marmalade's Marie Antoinette's Drag Ensemble from 2024. 2. A replica of the masquerade ball gown worn by Grace Kelly in Alfred Hitchcock's 1955 film To Catch a Thief, originally designed by Edith Head. 3. Andrea Grossi Toile de Jouy Ensemble from Welcome to Doozland Collection 2019. 4. The Aurelio Evening Dress by Erdem for Spring-Summer 2024. 5. The Toile de Jouy Pannier Dress by Vivienne Westwood for Spring-Summer 1996 from Les Femmes ne connaissent pas toute leur coquetterie collection. 6. Karl Lagerfeld for Chanel Haute Couture Spring-Summer 2018 evening gown from French Fantasy collection made from pleated silk tulle. 7. Karl Lagerfeld for Chanel 2012 pannier ensemble from the Coco Rock Cruise collection. I wish I could see that Coco Rocks one better. That one there, the little set. I love that. 8. Ensemble by Medium Kirchhoff, Spring-Summer 2013, with Bergeret hat by Edward Medium from 2025. 9. Satin Jumpsuit with Lace Fan, Ensemble by Rihanna for Fendi in collaboration with Puma. Standing watching the montages that play on the screen, my thoughts travel back to the opening note we read in part 1, at the exhibition's entrance in Marble Court. Before we leave this room, let's recap on the words the curators used to open the exhibition. Quote, "The most fashionable, scrutinised and controversial queen in history, Marie Antoinette's name summons both visions of excess and objects and interiors of great beauty. The Austrian Archduchess turned Queen of France had enormous impact on French taste and fashion in the 1770s and 1780s. Recent scholarship has overturned her reputation as a frivolous spendthrift, but Marie Antoinette's considerable influence as a patron of the arts and style icon has yet to be properly explored. The arts of her time remain in her husband's name, the Louis XVI style. What if, instead, we considered the Marie Antoinette style? This exhibition explores that style, how Marie Antoinette, the person, shaped not just the dress, design and interiors of her own time, but has continued to exert an influence over the past 232 years of decorative arts, fashion and film. This is the design legacy of an early modern celebrity and the story of a woman whose power to fascinate has never ebbed." Curator Sarah Grant in the exhibition book has observed that, quote, "Each new wave of interest in Marie Antoinette has been triggered by some political, social or literary event. I believe that the exhibition itself has already started to stimulate a new wave. This is why in part 1 I identified this exhibition as culturally and academically significant. The objects we've seen and learnt about that have come together in the V&A have opened up a new chapter in the book of the ideas of the future under the title Marie Antoinette Style. I think that this exhibition has given us the evidence to go beyond Stefan Zweig's observations of Marie Antoinette as a Rococo queen and launch into examinations that more thoroughly explore her role as a patron of the arts, a tastemaker of her times, and her enduring influence. As always, I look forward to reading your thoughts, so do feel free to leave a comment. The best ideas are sparked from discussion. And now, after one last look, I'll begrudgingly say goodbye to the exhibition. There's a brilliant gift shop full of great books and toile de jouy trinkets, but sadly no re-release edition of this other cultural style icon. Wow! I wish I could have this wallpaper. This is just on the walkway to the shop. How adorable is this? I absolutely love this. They're all just on the paper. I'd buy that as a print. Well, look at that. Custom prints. Before we head outside, I just want to head upstairs to see someone who was missing in the exhibition, Louis. Here he is in bust form without his queen up on floor 4, whilst his other half, created by Louis Simon Boisois in 1788, dazzles downstairs. Perhaps a symbolic choice made by the curators, for many reasons. Well, friends, it's been quite a while since I came out of the V&A and it was still light outside, so spring must officially be here. I love those light nights, don't you? On the way to summer, absolutely beautiful. This was, of course, filmed over a couple, maybe a few visits to the exhibition. I'm a V&A member, which means you can go to any exhibition as often as you like for free, even when it's sold out. It's a brilliant thing to do. There's also a lovely couple of members rooms that I have access to and a load of talks that I can go to, and I get to go to the nice new exhibitions. Speaking of, a lot is coming up here at the V&A this year, so do subscribe and come back to Queenie of London if you love exhibitions and museums as much as I do, because we've got not only lots going on here at the V&A but also in our other spaces within the capital. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Just while I'm standing here across the road, I just wanted to show you something. This house in a very prime location, you can see a blue plaque there. That house actually belonged to Sir Henry Cole, who was the Victoria and Albert Museum's first ever director. I am very interested in Henry Cole. I've got a good book which I'll leave below if you want to know the story behind the history and the history of the museum. It's very, very interesting. That was his house, and how's that for a commute? That's my kind of idea of a commute. I quite like it. But friends, just thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed our time at this stunning exhibition, and I hope to see you all again soon. Take good care. Loads of love from London, Queenie. Mwah. Very nice evening. I might walk home actually. Takes me about 20 minutes. Following the Harrods van.